Hello and welcome. I'm Sindira Chetty, Digital Editor at Farmers Weekly. Today I'm speaking to Izaak Breitenbach, General Manager of the South African Poultry Association, regarding the current avian influenza crisis plaguing the poultry industry. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today, Mr. Breitenbach. Now, to start, could you please explain what avian influenza is and how would farmers detect this disease in their flocks?
Yes, avian influenza is obviously a poultry disease and not a human disease at all. It's very similar to influenza that humans would get. But in this case, with highly pathogenic avian influenza, it doesn't only make the birds sick, but it causes a high mortality amongst birds once a flock contracted that particular disease.
Let's now discuss the number of bird flu outbreaks that have occurred to date. How many birds have been culled, and which provinces have been the most affected? Could you also touch on the economic impact of the outbreak for South Africa?
Yes, if we talk about the current outbreak, it started in April this year. In the Western Cape, we had incidents of avian influenza. We also had incidents in KwaZulu-Natal during that particular period of time. But for the last 2 months, we actually have the disease spreading in Gauteng, or the greater Gauteng area. So the areas affected are parts of Mpumalanga, Limpopo, Northwest Province, and the Free State. So it's very concentrated in this particular area, with the Western Cape and Natal very, very quiet. If we talk about the amount of birds that we've culled in excess of 5 million commercial layer birds and in excess of 2.5 million broiler breeder birds to date. Now, that is significant. That represents between 20 and 30% of the total flock that we have on the floor. And that obviously impacts our ability to supply eggs, and we've seen an egg shortage in the market already. And it also impacts our ability to produce meat or put meat in the market. I haven't seen a shortage yet, but we would expect that the total amount of meat going into the market will reduce in about 8 weeks' time.
As you've mentioned in your previous comment, there is a shortage of eggs in the market. We have also noticed at many retail stores, there is a shortage, and in some instances, retailers are limiting the number of eggs being sold to customers. Could you share more insights into the current status of the egg shortage and the possible shortage of chicken meat in South Africa? Should South Africans be concerned?
Yes, if we talk about what consumers can expect, I think it's very important to note that 70 to 80% of our birds are still there. They are in chicken houses and they are producing eggs and they are producing meat. And therefore, we will not get to a situation where there will be no meat or no eggs available for our consumers. 70 to 80% of those are still there. If we then focus on commercial eggs, it is very difficult to import eggs because it will have to come by ship, and that will take 6 to 9 weeks, and by then the eggs will be deemed old. So we have very limited ability to mitigate the shortage of eggs in the market. If we talk about broilers, that is completely different. When we look at the broilers and what we can do to reduce the impact of this disease on the supply of broiler meat, the very first one is that the industry to date has imported in excess, are importing in excess of 21.5 million fertile hatching eggs. Now that will be used we will hatch those, we will have broiler chicks, we will grow them out, and we will supply meat to the market. So that is the one remedy to this particular problem that we have. The second remedy that we have will be imports. Now, there are 5 countries open for imports to South Africa, so we've got enough product available to cover the shortage in meat that we expect. Imports can come in from Brazil, the USA, Argentina, as well as Ireland and Spain. And that will we expect to see a significant increase in the amount of imports from now until December, and that will be in time to cover the potential shortage of chicken meat.
You had mentioned that SAPA and government are taking steps to mitigate the shortages of eggs and meat. However, what measures have been implemented to prevent the further spread of the disease? Are there any long-term strategies in place to prevent future outbreaks of avian influenza in the country?
Yes, there are. If we talk about the short-term actions that we take to contain the disease, it relates to the fact that we are actually following a stamp out policy or a culling policy. So should a flock go positive, we will cull that flock. We will also destroy the eggs produced by that particular flock on site. And that will mean we will kill the virus on site. And therefore, it should not spread. So that is the very important action that we take. We've taken that in 2017. It worked well in 2021, and a little bit less effective in 2023. But that is still the only tool that we have in our available to curtail the spread of the disease and to stamp out the disease. Having said that, we have had discussions and agreement with the Department of Agriculture to import vaccines. To date, we haven't had vaccines in the country. There was no use for vaccines in the country, but we've agreed to bring in vaccines to sort out not only this particular outbreak, but this will address in a material way future outbreaks of the disease. And we will not see the economic loss, the mortality, and what goes with that in future if we vaccinate. And we expect to have a vaccine available within 2 to 6 months.
Now, in response to the bird flu outbreak, recently, Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Ibrahim Patel, has called upon the International Trade Administration Commission to investigate the option of a temporary rebate on import taxes and anti-dumping duties for poultry importers. What are your thoughts on this proposal? And how do you believe it might impact the poultry industry in South Africa?
A decision like that will decimate the poultry industry. This poultry industry has been in a loss situation for a long time, since January this year. Since January, it had to contend with the impact of load shedding, and load shedding has a material impact on our businesses. I've quoted in the media before that load shedding is costing this industry R1.20 per kilogram of chicken produced. And that has put the companies into further financial loss. We then had avian influenza appearing about 2 months ago. The avian influenza has spread. It is probably peaking right now. We have not seen the end of avian influenza yet. And the losses due to influenza is material. If I can just quote the losses that Quantum Foods had because of influenza, Rainbow and Astral, that amounts to more than R500 million. And that is only 3 companies in South Africa. One can just imagine what that will be for the whole industry in South Africa. Now with companies in a lot of cases having lost every single chicken that they own, the chances of survival is very, very slim. We also have government not paying us for the birds that we destroy. That should actually take place, putting a further burden on the industry. So when we look at this particular rebate on duties, all that will do is to ask of the industry to also now, having looked at all these negative factors that I've mentioned, to also now compete with dumping. And we don't believe that that's in the interest of the industry. It's going to cause economic hardship. It's going to cause companies to close doors. It's going to create job losses. So we would like to talk to Minister Patel and try and convince him of a different view.